Hey, welcome back and welcome if you're new here. My name's Sarah. I make videos every single week here on YouTube talking about my journey with acne, gut health, hormones, and all of that good stuff. I've been dealing with some really intense gut health issues over the last couple of years, including really chronic acid reflux. So all day, every day, I have a very burnt throat. Sitting here right now, it just feels burnt from here to here. I've been diagnosed with gastritis, Sibo, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, and yeah, it's just been really kind of overwhelming, to be honest. I know that there are so many of you who are also going through really similar journeys with your gut health, so I thought I would just sit down today, make this video, talk about what's been working for me, what hasn't, and although I'm not the finished result, I really hope this video can support you, or we can support each other perhaps, whilst we're going through this. I actually put off making this video for quite some time because I really felt like I should make this video when I was healed and when I was completely better. But I've really realised over the last couple of months that actually it is all about the journey, and I'm learning so much, like I said, that I want to share with you. But also sometimes, you know, you see these videos and people say that they've cured their health or they've completely cleared their skin, but does that mean it is the end? No, usually not. Like, I'm an example of that. I make lots of videos talking about my acne journey, but do I break out? Yes, I still break out. An example here. An example here, it happens. Does it mean that I haven't managed to clear my skin? Of course not. I've come such a long way. My skin is, for the most part, pretty much clear, and you know, I only break out from time to time. But I just thought it's really relevant if you're also struggling with your gut health that we can go through this together, and like I said, I can share some things that I've learned along the way. I never in a million years imagined I'd be somebody that had a chronic health condition. I certainly didn't envision that it would be this life impacting as well. So I really feel for you if you're going through the same thing. And even if this video doesn't give you all the answers to your own issues, I really hope you watch this video and know that you're not alone. Okay, so let's take this back to the start. In January 2019, almost 2 years ago now, I was commuting to work one morning and I started to feel that my throat was just really burnt. Like I was getting a lot of acid reflux, and you know, we've all had bouts of that in the past. I imagine we've all gone through life and that's happened to us occasionally. So I didn't really think very much of it. I was on a bit of a health kick, as you are in January. I was also designing my skin story journal, which is such an amazing tool that I absolutely love, and I really got a lot of joy out of creating it. You know, it was something I was using for myself. It's essentially trackers, ironically, that you fill in about your health and your symptoms to help you discover your acne triggers. So I was really excited about that. I was getting up super early in the morning, around 5:30, and I was working on that, designing it. I was also working on content before I was getting on the tube and going to work. I was also doing other bits like planning my wedding, which was supposed to happen last June in Greece. And you know, there was just lots going on. So I felt a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit stressed. And I guess maybe the early mornings and lack of sleep all kind of came together to create the perfect storm where I started to get acid reflux. The reason I want to set the scene is because I think all of this is so relevant, and I would love you to kind of think about where you are at the moment and if you are putting a lot of pressure on yourself. Because I'm certainly somebody that does that. I put so much pressure on myself to be great at everything. I want to be a good friend, I want to be a good boss at work, I want to be somebody that supports others online, I want to be a good girlfriend, wife, whatever that entails this year, you know, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing my best at everything. But ultimately, giving myself the task of setting up a small business and creating content and being, you know, good at my day job and all of the rest of it really started to have this kind of chronic low-level stress kind of going on in the back of my mind. And of course, I'm sure it's the same for you. There are always just additional stresses that are going on, little things that come up in life which happen to all of us and ultimately just make us feel quite tense and, yeah, on edge sometimes. And these things, this low-level chronic stress, is so impactful to our health. And I'm not saying that everybody that is a little bit stressed is going to have gut health issues. Obviously that's not true. But if you're somebody like me that has been on plenty of courses of antibiotics, who has been on the pill for 10 years, who's taken other medication like Roaccutane, who is generally quite type A and always on the go and just stressing their bodies out, then the chances are it will manifest into something. So after a day or two of this acid reflux, I decided actually I'm gonna go and get something for it. So of course, I went into my local Boots, got myself some Gaviscon, I believe it's called Tums, I believe in America, but essentially that kind of chalky bicarbonate soda type medication that neutralizes the stomach acid. And it honestly didn't work. Like, I would take one and it would relieve the symptoms for probably about 10 minutes at best. And then it would just be, you know, acid reflux again and a burnt throat. So wishful thinking, I just assumed over the course of the next week or so it would just subside. It was just a bout of something I was going through. But that didn't happen, obviously. So I then went to go and speak to the pharmacist, who gave me a drug called OMEPRAZOLE, I think that's how you pronounce it. And essentially what it does is it turns off the pumps in your stomach that produce acid. It was a pretty low dose, so I didn't really notice any changes, although I kept it up for about a week until I then decided to go and speak to my GP, because I just felt like something really wasn't right. And if the medications that I was getting through the pharmacist and in Boots weren't working, I thought I really do need to speak to somebody. So my GP prescribed me all the protein pump inhibitors. I will not bore you with every single one, but I definitely went on about 3. Basically, again, like I said, protein pump inhibitors like the OMEPRAZOLE, that group of family of drugs, yeah, completely designed to just shut down your stomach acid, turn off those pumps. So essentially you won't have stomach acid in your, when you're digesting your food, so that it won't come up your esophagus and burn you. And I was on a pretty high dose of something called lansoprazole for a few weeks, and I noticed, it was subsiding. However, after about 2.5 weeks, it came back so much worse. Like, it was really, really painful. And actually I was left with this kind of burnt throat at all times. And I was on the same dosage of the drug. I couldn't actually take any more. Like, I wasn't advised to take a higher dose of this. So I just stopped because they weren't working. Also, something intuitively in me said that these drugs don't seem right for the issue that I'm experiencing. And I guess I had taken to the internet a little bit and done some research, but you need stomach acid to digest your food. So that just seems really odd, and all the kind of research I'd done for my skin and acne, they'd always been talking about, taking apple cider vinegar, taking digestive enzymes, really helping promote digestion. So this just seemed like the absolute opposite. And whilst I thought, it could be a great temporary drug if I was just going through a bout of acid reflux, if it was coming back whilst I was taking these drugs, which were turning off the acid in my stomach, it just felt wrong. So as I said, I quit that and decided I would have a look at this holistically in a natural kind of approach, which I imagine if you're also somebody who's going through gut health issues and you've been prescribed these sort of drugs, you might be thinking the same, like you don't want to be relying on these drugs. So, having a look at how we could do this naturally probably is something you've thought about as well. So overnight, I pretty much changed my diet. I went onto a really, really restrictive diet. I was basically not eating anything I would usually, definitely not coffee, which I absolutely love, but I was just eating very kind of what I assumed would be like low acidic foods. So not much fruit, really relying on things like grains, really relying on, other foods that I just thought were pretty bland, meats, etc., without any seasoning, that I could digest and also not have that feeling of burning my esophagus. Again, no diet changes helped at all, so that didn't work. I bought a protocol online, which was somebody who had had acid reflux and was sharing what would work for them, all these different supplements I was taking. What else was I doing? Yeah, I honestly was just following all the advice from all these different Instagram accounts, talking about, upping your levels of acid actually, and it was a low stomach acid issue. So I was taking something called BETAINE HCl, which your stomach naturally produces anyway. So I was taking that, but finding that the burning was hurting even more with that. And finally, I then got referred from my GP to a gastroenterologist. I can't say the word, gastroenterologist. So a doctor that specializes in gut health. And with a lot of persuading, because they really weren't keen to put me forward for this at first, because it to them had only been 3 months. To me, it felt like a lifetime. But I finally got an endoscopy. So they put a camera down my throat and check out any kind of potential symptoms, or, I don't actually know what they're looking for or what they're going to do about it. But, they confirmed I had acid reflux, but they also confirmed I had gastritis. And the doctor's approach was take these protein pump inhibitors and, that's all we can offer really. And of course I tried that. It hadn't worked for me the first time, but I did try it for a second round. And I just thought, you know what, Sarah, let go of all the stress of trying to figure this out on your own naturally. Just do what the doctors tell you, take these drugs again, let's see what happens. And I did exactly that. I followed this for like a month, again, going back to eating what I wanted, but taking these protein pump inhibitors. And I noticed I was just getting worse and worse, and my stomach was so bloated. I was developing other symptoms like just really uncomfortable pain in my tummy, which up until that point hadn't really existed. There was some sort of bloating during the end of the day, but nothing too crazy. But honestly, I was bloated when I woke up till the moment I went to bed. Like all day, every day I was bloated, reflux, burnt throat, and I just felt miserable. I hope you guys got a cup of tea for this one, because I'm sorry, it is a long one. I also think it's relevant to add that I have a really close friend who has had the exact same symptoms as me and was almost like sort of 6 months ahead on this whole kind of acid reflux journey. So it felt kind of strange, but I almost could predict what was going to happen next, which has its pros and cons. But she had, after taking protein pump inhibitors for quite some time because of the acid reflux, then been diagnosed with something called small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. And when I spoke to her about my symptoms, she said, you need to get checked for this, because honestly, That is like one of the biggest things that she discovered on her journey, and it sounded quite likely that I was having the same symptoms with my bloating, etc. So the problem is, in the UK, the NHS does not provide testing, or it didn't at that point, for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You have to go through private medical care to be able to get that test. So I did. I'm really lucky in the sense that I have work that pay for medical insurance, so you know, I pay in excess, but I was really happy to pay the £100 or whatever to have this test to see what was going on. And surprise, surprise, taking those proton pump inhibitors potentially may have brought on small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which is where the bacteria in your stomach, which could be good or bad bacteria, are congregating in the small intestines, which is not where they're meant to live. They're meant to live in the colon and the larger intestines. So what usually has happened there is the lack of stomach acid when you're digesting your food hasn't broken down the food well enough, and it hasn't got rid of like the bacteria, pathogens, like all these things that we're meant to get rid of before it goes into the small intestines. And so therefore you create this problem of having, you know, dysbiosis. There's bacteria in your gut where it's not meant to be, and it causes all these issues like bloating, nausea, brain fog, just to name a few. So if you're experiencing really intense bloating and pain, I would highly recommend getting that test, because finding out if you have Sibo, I never know how to say it, could be really, really crucial in your gut health journey. So after this diagnosis, I then went on to see a dietitian, and she put me on the low FODMAP diet. Now, the concept of the low FODMAP diet, if you haven't heard of it before, I'm sure lots of you have if you're watching this video and you also have gut health issues, is really an elimination diet. You take out all of the carbohydrates that usually have trouble breaking down in your gut, ferment quite a lot and cause a lot of problems. The idea is that you remove them, take the stress off your digestive system, and then slowly introduce them back in so that you can see which ones may be a trigger for you. The problem is that I just didn't see any triggers in particular. Everything made me bloat, everything was painful, everything caused acid reflux. I couldn't really get to the bottom of what was making me feel better and what wasn't, because I wasn't feeling better. Also, apologies for my croaky voice, because honestly, like when I speak a lot, particularly having this this issue with my esophagus, I just sound so much croakier now, and it does put a strain on my throat. So I don't mean to sound like Darth Vader, I apologise. So the NHS dietitian didn't really know what to do with me when the low FODMAP diet wasn't working. She said it isn't something you should be on long term, so took me off it and essentially discharged me, saying that the root cause of this wasn't food. And that is a trained, qualified dietitian working for the NHS in the gut health world. So to say I was confused was an understatement. I was also put forward by my gastroenterologist on the NHS for a pH monitoring test, which essentially is a 24-hour tube down your nose into your stomach, monitoring the pH level of the acid coming up your throat. So gross. I will put up a picture now. I actually had two of these, one privately, one through the NHS. They both came back with different results. Both basically concluded that I had some acid in my throat, but not enough to be put forward for surgery. Both of those tests just completely confused me, to be honest. And if you've had these tests as well, I would love to know how yours turned out. You basically have this box that kind of sits in a pouch, like you wear across your body, and you're meant to press a button every time you have reflux or you have symptoms. But it was confusing because I don't have like, oh, acid reflux and then it's gone away for a few hours. For me, it's just a constant burnt throat. So I was just pressing this button all the time. And then on the second test, I wasn't pressing the button at all, because I pressed the button when the symptoms came on, which is straight away, and then pressed it again at the end when the symptoms didn't end, but just, you know, I had to take the monitor off. So, you know, it just didn't make any sense. And this thing came back completely inconclusive. And, you know, the only thing that they suggested is potentially you may be put forward for reflux surgery, which is essentially a surgery that my friend even had, where they basically close your esophagus. They almost tie it in a knot, I think, in some cases, so that the reflux, you know, the acid can't come up your throat. This sounded terrifying. It didn't sound like it would get to the root cause, like the actual reason I was having reflux. So it wasn't really something I was ready to consider, and I still don't think I'm ready to consider it at the moment. Personal preference, you know, I don't know what the future's going to look like. Maybe I will decide to have that surgery in the future. But the other thing that they say with acid reflux and the pH monitoring test is they basically say, do you have acid in your esophagus or do you not have acid in your esophagus? But there's so much more to it than that, in my opinion. Acid is obviously measured on a pH scale. So surely the quantities of acid in my throat need to be higher than the quantities of anything else to be able to be measured by a pH monitoring test. And I don't mean to get too technical with you, but if you're refluxing all day, it's not necessarily just going to be acid. There's going to be a whole lot of other things going on, but it doesn't detract from the fact that it's burning your throat. So I just couldn't get my head around it. I still don't understand that test, and it was inconclusive, didn't really help, and the only option, even if there was something to be conclusive with, was reflux surgery, which, as I said, not a fan of right now. So in about February this year, after this entire year of going back and forth to the doctors, speaking to the gastroenterologists, you know, trying natural remedies, trying different supplements, trying the low FODMAP diet, I was just feeling really low. And in my mind, I just had this weird idea that, you know, June, my wedding would come around, and once that stress was out the way, I was going to feel so much better and, you know, my reflux would subside. Again, obviously 2020 has been an absolute disaster for the majority of the world. Wedding didn't happen, nothing has happened. So reflux didn't go away, and I think that was wishful thinking anyway. I think after you've had this issue for about a year, it's probably more than what initially you thought it might be, like stress. It might have been the catalyst, but certainly there's a lot more underlying issues by that point. So the early start of 2020, I was put on 2 different antibiotics to see if we could kill the bacteria in my small intestine. So I went on 2 different ones, which I can't remember the names, but I'll put up on screen now. I took them back to back, and honestly, I didn't really notice too much difference. I noticed maybe a little bit less bloating. I kind of felt marginally better for a couple of weeks, but straight away after I stopped, things went back to normal. The reflux had never subsided, and the bloating just continued to get back to its usual state. So I then started a course of Simprove, which is a probiotic drink, which I absolutely love, and it did wonders for my skin actually. Like, I felt taking my daily dose of Simprove really dramatically helped my skin, but I didn't see huge benefits for like my reflux, maybe a little bit for my bloating. So whilst I was going through this kind of Simprove journey, I then spoke to the doctor again, who basically at this point just said, we can't help you. We have tried everything. We've tried the antibiotics, we've done the testing. Unless you want the surgery at one point in your life, like there's nothing more that we can do for you here. And I felt so down about the whole situation. I felt really hopeless. I really wasn't sure what was next for me, but I did sort of say to myself, conventional medicine is not working. But what I did discover when I was taking Simprove in the early part of this year is somebody called Mallory, who has an Instagram account called Digesting Wellness. I was doing that thing where I was frantically up late at night, wondering what the hell I was going to do, and came across her on Instagram and loved her message. She is a naturopathic nutritionist, and she has also suffered with acid reflux, with Sibo, with all of these things that I was, you know, dealing with. So I signed up to her course, which I believe was a couple of £100. Felt like a big commitment, but I really kind of trusted her. I really felt like she had the information that I needed. So I went on this course, and there was so much to learn. It completely changed how I think, you know, acid reflux starts. It totally changed, you know, things like my mindset about it. And it was just really comforting, especially as she has a Facebook group that is attached to this course, and, you know, speaking to other people going through the same thing is so comforting. Hence why I'm making this video, because I really hope if you're going through this, me and you can talk and you won't feel so alone either. So I won't go into all the ins and outs on Mallory's course. I will let you sign up to that if you are interested. This is not an ad by any means, but yeah, I will leave the details in the description box. And that was really helpful for my bloating. I feel like I've kind of got the Sibo side of things under control. I felt like I had a lot more energy. You know, I was just taking on all her advice. Some of it was a little bit tricky, obviously going into lockdown and having access to specific foods and things, but for the most part, she doesn't believe in restrictive diets. And whilst her diet recommendations might be a little bit different to the things I would usually eat, none of it was, you know, impossible. So I really enjoyed going through that course, learning all the information and putting it into action, which I pretty much have done ever since. Reflux, unfortunately though, wasn't really getting much better. I had kind of waves with it, but it never went away. And then when I was away in the summer and I was drinking every day, not much, maybe a small glass of wine with dinner, I had the worst gastritis flare-up I have ever had. And I think alongside taking like digestive enzymes, really trying to look after my digestion, drinking wine, which I wasn't doing much of prior to that, it just created havoc on my gastritis, and it was so painful. If you've had gastritis, I'm sure you can understand. I'd had bouts of it over the last year or two, but this was like severe. So I just decided that day I was going to sign up to actually work with Mallory one-on-one, and, you know, I wanted to get to the bottom of this. So that's what I've been doing since. I've been taking a ton of different supplements and homeopathy remedies. I've gone through such a lot of trial and error. I'm currently working with her at the moment, and I have my second consultation with her tomorrow, which I'm really excited about. She has been so supportive, and I actually think working with someone else and actually putting your trust into them and letting somebody in so that they can share that journey with you and support you really is so valuable. I feel way more optimistic about the outcome of this now, whereas before I was just feeling low and so desperate. Some of the things that I would really advise if you're also going through gut health issues that you really haven't got to the bottom of is actually getting testing, which is what I'm going to be doing this week. I'm going to be doing a GI stool map, I believe the test is called, where we really look at the bacteria in my stomach. There are lots of other tests as well that you can look at, but I personally believe that this is like a holistic issue. Gut health, skin, all of these things are very well connected. Your body is one thing, right? One living organism. So there is really no point in saying like there's an issue here, but it won't affect elsewhere. So I'm really doing a deep dive right now. I'm really prioritizing relaxing. And I have to say, yesterday is the first day where I felt like my symptoms were slightly improving. And I do think this is down to mindset. I do believe actually choosing to find joy in like daily things that I would usually call stresses. For example, like the endless to-do list that I know lots of us wake up with. Like the first thing I do when I wake up is I get on my phone and I write down anything that I can think of that I think I might forget off my to-do list. So it just feels overwhelming. And I think actually saying, hold on, we need to slow down, we need to look after our health is just such a priority this year. And I'm making sure over the next 6 to 12 months that is my priority, that I'm not prioritizing making content, or I'm not prioritizing starting a business, or I'm not prioritizing any of these things. So that's where I'm at. I also want to add, and I know you'll know this if you watch my channel regularly, but I've always been super interested in nutrition. And I'm really considering going back to college and actually studying this. Not only so that I can help my own gut health and support my friends and family, but I really hope that this could be something that I could share, like whatever I learn through my content here and on Instagram. But of course, like I said, I'm trying to prioritize my stress levels, so it probably isn't something I'm going to commit to right away, but it's certainly in the back of my mind, because I personally feel that with situations like gut health, which are so complex, same with hormones, female health, they seem so complex that sometimes the answer isn't with conventional doctors. By no means am I saying that they don't play a role, they absolutely do, but I just think sometimes it just takes a little bit more kind of patience and digging deep to find our answers. I don't know if you will agree with me, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But that's where my mindset is at the moment. I'm also starting a course of acupuncture on Friday, which I'm very excited about. I've heard amazing things, not only just for my gut health, but for general relaxation anyway. I find it to be such an interesting practice and a really great self-care ritual as well. So if you can afford it, if you can commit to it, I would really recommend having a look at that as well. And I'll certainly keep you posted on my journey here on this channel. So I'm very conscious that this video has run on for a very, very long time, so I am going to stop it here, but I just want to say thank you so much if you've watched this, and please know that I'm fully supporting your journey as well. If you ever want to chat to me about these things, please give me a DM or a comment here, or find me over on Instagram at Sarah_skinstory, because I would love to connect with you. I know that this can be such an overwhelming issue, especially if you're also, you know, dealing with these chronically. Yeah, I just want to say I'm sending you all the love, and we will get through this and we will heal. If you're interested to see some of my routine and how I'm kind of dealing with stress and what I'm eating for breakfast and that kind of thing, then I recently uploaded my morning routine, which I'm going to link on screen now. So definitely go and click that and give it a watch, and I will see you over there. Thanks, guys.